I often hear people online talk about how games these days are costing more and more money and how they're taking longer and longer to make. And allow me to break that illusion right now and tell you that that is just plain false. Games take forever and cost so much because suits and upper management believe that if a game has a higher budget, it'll automatically do well, which this year alone has proven that that isn't the case. If games are costing so much to make these days, and so we need to pay $70 for a single video game, then why are we facing massive layoffs in the gaming industry while multiple billionaires coincidentally are getting massive bonuses and pay raises at nearly the same time? Skull and Bones is such an example of a game that took too much time and money and would still be considered too expensive even if it was free. Costing 11 years and at least $200 million, this game is a prime example of corporate greed. Granted, this game had a plethora of reasons as to why it cost so much time and money to make, but it still also cost 70 doubloons at launch along with an in-game store, so my point still stands. Well, Tom Jack, games are getting more expensive to make because newer technology costs so much. Okay, why are we acting like the technology previously used to make games suddenly no longer exists? I understand our expectations for games has risen over the years, but if every quadruple A release is going to be like Skull and Bones, then I think regression might just be the better option. Skull and Bones is a game that released in the year of our Lord 2024, costing 200 million mom bucks and hailed as the first quadruple A title, yet somehow it lacks half of the content and soul of AC4 Black Flag, a game that released 11 years ago. Now I checked. Black Flag cost around 100 milli, which today, thanks to inflation, which still isn't real by the way, would be around 133 million, which is still almost half of Skull and Bones' budget. We can debate all we want as to why Skull and Bones failed. Poor management, Ubisoft Singapore not being the most experienced devs, all kinds of crap that no one cares about. Me? I have my own reasons as to why I think this game failed as badly as it did that no one else has mentioned. Well, okay, let me rephrase that and say that I haven't heard anyone make this point yet. A point that, right from conception, doomed this game to fail. Now, I think we can all agree that the ship combat from Black Flag is great. And yes, I know the footage I'm using is of AC Rogue, but I didn't have Black Flag installed and it's the same gameplay, so shut up, whore! Skull and Boner is just the Black Flag ship combat turned into a full game, which on paper sounds good. I never have and never will play Skull and Bones, but I think it's safe to assume that the gameplay itself is actually fairly good. If you played it in 30-minute bursts, you might actually walk away having a fun time. But Skull and Bones is a live service game, so 30 minutes of gameplay at a time is a bad thing, and to be honest, bad for just any game in general. Now, along with Black Flag, I'm going to toss two other games at you, and I want you to see if you can spot the commonality between these three. Ready? Assassin's Creed Black Flag, Batman Arkham Knight, and Persona. Did you figure it out? Well, you took too long, so I'm going to tell you anyways. All three of these games are very good, great even, and they all share a common factor that I think help elevate these games even higher, and that's the fact that all three of these games feature not one, but two primary gameplay loops. Let's take a gander at Arkham Knight. It not only builds upon the amazing free-flow combat and Predator stealth sections the series is known for, but adds an entirely new mechanic to the game that completely changes the series as a whole, the Batmobile. The Tankmobile is absolutely baller. It controls super well both as a car and tank, as well as adding new ways to interact with the environment like using the power winch or smaller things like destructible environments makes it an excellent addition to Arkham Knight. Could the game have relied on it a little less? Sure. Could they have not at all bothered with the tank cell sections? Absolutely. Though I don't think they were entirely bad, just one too many of them. Looking at you, fucking Deathstroke. Overall, though, I would say the Batmobile is a net positive addition to the Arkham games, and I cannot stress how important the word addition is. As fun and entertaining as the Batmobile from Arkham Knight is, an entire game that is nothing but Batmobile would be agonizing. The Batmobile works best when paired with the rest of the gameplay that Arkham Knight offers. It's a nice balance where you go and do some regular Batman shit like beat up goons or solve a mystery, and then you go take a break from that by riding around in the Batmobile for like an hour. Then when you're bored of that, you go back to doing things you were doing earlier, and it all complements each other very well. Now this one is a lot more controversial, but in my opinion, the same is true for the Persona series. I've mentioned in the past that I hate turn-based combat JRPGs and visual novels, yet Persona is one of my favorite series of all time, and I think it's the balancing act between the two that keep me from getting too involved with one of the gameplay loops and end up hating it. Also, Makoto Nijima. And all of this comes right back around to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. or rogue in this case, same shit. The point is, while the ship combat is really fun, like the Batmobile, it's not good or deep enough to stand on its own two legs. It needs something to pair itself with. A gameplay system like this is meant to be the side dish to a main course, something extra that's nice to have and enhances the experience. It boggles the mind how this was figured out 11 years ago. Just one type of system to pair itself to Skull and Bones, and I guarantee you that the game would have seen more success. Maybe not any kind of mainstream success, but maybe a dedicated following like For Honor. That would actually be pretty interesting. When you board a ship, you have to do a For Honor like one-on-one with the ship captain. That would actually go pretty hard and give something else to do in the game, because for fuck's sake, the boarding is just a cutscene. What I find fucking hilarious is that Gooby did this somewhat recently with AC Odyssey. That game had a perfectly functioning RPG game with a simple yet fun ship combat system. Yeah, I know different studios, but one of those two was entirely dedicated to ship combat, and they were the ones that messed it up. One last thing before you're dismissed for the day. Trust me, you'll want to see this because it's going to make Skull and Bones look even more pathetic. There was a game that came out for mobile around the time of Black Flag called Assassin's Creed Pirates, and what it was Black Flag's ship combat as an entire game. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Ubi made Skull and Bones 11 years ago. Granted, I don't think there was any online play, but I am remembering from 11 years ago, so who actually knows? It's so funny that Ubisoft Singapore took over a decade to release this game, yet in 1 year, some team managed to pull out a mobile game of the exact same thing. My favorite part? You know how I was talking about how having two gameplay loops to pair with the ship combat? Well, you're not gonna fucking believe it, but AC Pirates had a second gameplay loop. Now, it wasn't very good. It was a Temple Run style minigame you did at the end of Cave and Ruins explorations, but despite all that, this mobile game from 11 years ago had more content than a game released in 2024. And AC Pirates was free. You didn't have to pay a single doubloon for it, but I guess the dipshit French have decided that something we considered mobile game worthy is now worth paying $70 for. That's all I wanted to say. Go like and subscribe or I'll cry. Ugh.